Good evening, everyone. This is Mark Molina, CEO of Molina Leadership and Business Development Solutions. We're very excited this evening to be hosting the Ward 6 City Council Candidate Forum for the City of Springfield. Tonight we have incumbent Joe Pictionary for Ward 6 and his opponent, or Greg Guevara, also from Springfield. Myself and Nick Nelson and Robert Killen are serving as panelists. I'll be running the time clock. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. They'll have 2 minutes to answer the questions and 3 minutes for closing comments. Everyone will be on mute with the exception of the candidates and the panel. If you're not speaking, candidates, if you have things going on, press mute because the computer will pick up background noise. Excuse me, I'm sorry. With that said, let me get my clock set again. All right, we will start with Councilman Pictionary. You have 2 minutes, sir, to make an opening statement to the voters.
Okay. My name is Joe Pictionary. I've been the Springfield City Councilor for multiple years now. I have prioritized my work as a city councilor as a advocate for small business. I own a small business myself, and I know that it's a part of the very foundation of which a small city and town can operate and do well. I am also a very strong advocate for housing at all price points. The people need to, need to really understand that if you have a price point house that's very expensive here, but you sell it, then somebody that's going to move into it is going to move up from a different price point, and so on down, all the way down to where there is very small homes that are also being built like ADUs, and it will allow housing for people of basically any income. So putting a lot of effort towards that. And also the city's infrastructure. We've created a team that's going to be working on the roads throughout this summer, and the same team will be continuing some work into the winter with some other improvements, because you can't really help fix roads in the wintertime. Along with that, I'm an advocate for less government, more work, and I think that it's very important that the city government operates within its means and delivers the highest product for the money that's being received. I would just appreciate your support, and I've got several projects on the horizon, and I want to see come to fruition and go from there. I think Springfield is a great city. I love this town, and I think it needs to grow wisely and not rapidly.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Let me reset. All right, Greg, you may proceed with your opening statement.
All right. Mark, members of the panel, thank you for hosting this forum. As I understand it, this forum is an introduction to people who don't know who I am, which is probably a lot of people. So here goes. My name is Greg Guevara. I'm running for City Council Ward 6. I've been married for 38 years. I have 3 sons. All 3 attend or attended school in Thurston. I've lived in Springfield for over 25 years. I love it here. I've been a small business owner for over 20 years. I co-own Hearing Associates, a private audiological practice, and Ybarra Properties, an investment rental company. I graduated from Lane Community College, then attended the University of Oregon, where I graduated with a BS degree majoring in economics. I also served in the United States Marine Corps for 7 years. I mention this for 2 reasons. First, I enlisted when I was 17. Being so young and impressionable, the Marine Corps greatly influenced how I should conduct myself, implanting qualities I try to live up to daily. Qualities such as justice, judgment, dependability, decisiveness, knowledge, loyalty, and enthusiasm. And second, the Marine Corps instilled in me a love of country and how important it is to give back, a sense of duty. I've been in the private sector for over 30 years after being discharged. I've been blessed in so many ways, it is now time to give back. Or another way I view it, to whom much is given, much is expected. I want to serve my neighborhood, my ward, and my city. I want to serve as your city council. That pretty sums up why I'm running. Thanks for letting me participate in this forum.
Thank you, sir. Let me reset. Okay, Nick, you have the first question.
Hello, everybody. So I talk to a lot of business owners, and this is something that I just am consistently hearing. So my question would be, with no concrete timeline put out by the state, what's your opinion on when businesses should be allowed to reopen back up for business during COVID? And we can start with Joe.
Well, your sound quality is really poor. You're getting a lot of feedback and a dog in the background. But I think you're asking. I think you're asking something about what is our plan to get businesses back rolling after the COVID-19 pandemic crisis has been hitting us. Well, right now, I think that the plan is to keep as many as we have surviving and open, as opposed to getting things back open. So right now, we got to try to hold on to whatever we have and put into place and use programs that we can that have at our fingertips to help those folks. Like just a few weeks ago, Springfield kicked in $100,000 and matched with Eugene $100,000. The county kicked in $200,000, which created a pool that was gone pretty quick. However, Springfield right now, we're looking at strategizing some ways to find some more funds to infuse into that program again, as we're waiting for the state and federal money to come in, because the state is going to have a lot of money coming towards this area, and we have to have something in place to how that's going to spread out quickly. So really having this pilot program is going to work very well to having a system in place, and it's basically infusing it with funds and getting that money out to the small businesses. So I think keeping that program strong is very important. It's administered by a nonprofit that does a very good job in administering. So it's not, has nothing to do with favorites, has nothing to do with subdivisions. It's just a straight up help system. So that in mind, I think continuing those efforts in a strong way. And then we need to look at our workforce. Our workforce we have to maintain in order to be able to backfill some of these businesses that are rolling forward. So we need to work with playing workforce partnerships with the chamber, any of these areas that can maintain a pool of workers that we can get out into the workforce immediately.
Thank you, Joe.
Then Greg, same question. Do you need me to repeat it? I'm sorry if there was some feedback.
Yeah,
we have two dogs and they're trying to get out.
Could you please repeat it? Thank you.
Yeah, with no concrete timeline put out by the state, what's your opinion on businesses, on when businesses should be allowed to open back up for business and, you know, start generating, restarting this economy?
As soon as possible, but with the experts, the medical experts tell us when it's safe to do. And I know my business has suffered 90% cancellation rates. So I am ready for business to start. Dates I've been given, May 31. I would love to be back in business May 31, but I don't want to rush it if the all clear sign isn't given. So that said, given a date, I would have to say I would love to see everything getting back in place by middle of June.
Is that an answer?
Just a quick part of that.
Yes,
Nick, Nick, I didn't hear the part about what the date or the timing of getting business back open. I apologize. It was because of that background and I didn't hear that part.
Go ahead, Joe.
So is that all right if I could just quickly hit that? Thank you. Sorry. So as far as the timing is concerned, I completely agree with Greg. It's really kind of over it's not really on our chain of command. The chain of command is much higher up. So we're going to have to wait and watch very closely on how those decisions are made. But I think that the important part is getting in those webinars with the governor's office that we do every week, and make sure we're part of that decision-making process, and that's shared. So we have basically lifetime information. And I agree with Greg too. You know, it's a moving target, and you just can't do it too early, but you can't do it soon enough. I agree.
Very good. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right, Robert.
All right, gentlemen, I'm Robert Killen, Director of the Lane Small Business Development Center, and it's an honor to be here today with you. It's great that you're both business owners, past business owners, because I'm going to give you a softball here to start with. Question is, it's a two-part question. How is business woven into the fabric of our community? And in what specific ways in this role will you work to strengthen local business? And I'll start with Greg.
Thank you. I think, and right now we're getting a real life lesson of how closely businesses, small businesses, are woven into the community. Everything stopped. Where I work on 10th and Mill, it's a ghost town. I go to work early. I'm there at 7 o'clock. There's no one there. I leave at 4 o'clock. There's no one there. And everything's trickled down. You either, if you're not a business owner, you work for a business owner. And I have an employee. We're an essential business. We're open. We're open, so she's working, but her childcare person who takes care of her small child isn't working. So we got to be creative and, get her in, and also be able to make ways for her to take care of her child. So everything is intricately woven into small business. And that concerns me a lot, because I'm hoping something's get resolved soon, because I don't know how we can function without the majority of businesses working.
And the second half of that question, if I could repeat it, in what ways in this role would you work to strengthen local businesses?
How I would work to strengthen local businesses. Right now, I would work to I don't have a good answer for that right now. Kind of drew a blank.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
You'll have 2 minutes to answer each portion of the question on double questions.
Oh,
Okay.
Two-part questions. I just want the candidates to know that.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't know that. All right. So, Joe, do you want to take a crack at that? Do you want me to repeat the question?
I think, well, you know what, I'm going to answer thinking that I know what you asked, and if I go sideways on you or squirrel out, let me know. So, no, I agree. There's without good business structure, your small businesses are your foundation for the entire city, and if you don't have a good, strong foundation of thriving businesses, your town is going to eventually shrivel up. It depends upon, of course, what business, but frankly, if you got a small business that's got a high number of high-end equipment or structure, that's a tax basis based on that valuation of those buildings. So you got to look at what kind of small businesses you have and try to encourage businesses that have got some structural value. The other part of that is, of course, you got to try to encourage businesses that have got a high number of staff or high number of employees. You try to bring those types of businesses the best you can, try to make things attractive the best you can. You can use enterprise zones, you can use tax breaks, you can use several different tools that are out there to try to get that encouragement going. But you can't do that in a silo. You have to also look at your current businesses, and you have to communicate with them. You have to go to them and say, hey, what do you need in order for you to maintain your strength, in order for you to grow if you want to grow? And you got to find out what their needs are. So I would run over to Jackie over at the chamber and say, hey, what are you hearing back from these businesses? What do they need? You have to open those communications. And you have an economic development director in the city that also has a great handhold or finger touch on what's going on. So you need to capitalize on your staff to move those businesses forward. So you got to work close with them. You got to communicate.
Now, Robert, did you want to ask Council Pictionary the other part of that question, or did he answer it?
So he answered both in his response, but thank you.
Okay, very good.
Thank you both.
You're welcome. Good questions.
Good. Councilman Pictionary, I'll start with you for my question. You were on the city council during the housing market fallout.
Yeah.
Those were hard times because I was on the budget committee, and I remember there was a lot of really hard, scary, difficult decisions to be made. From that experience, we know that the city is going to lose a lot of income, our communities are going to lose a lot of income, and the potential for fallout is unknown. How will that experience help you, if reelected, how will it help you to continue to lead the city, the citizens, and your constituents out of what's going to be a very deep pit?
That's a good question. And you're right. That was some tough times. You know, we laid off a ton of city staff, and in fact, that's a huge deal when you know, furloughs and layoffs are important to be able to, you know, as small business owners, you know that there's times, and you know, I'm sure even Greg looks at it and saying, hey, I've got people that I can't, you know, continue to keep on staff or whatever. And the city is the same way. To keep your city staffed at today's level, when you have all these things going on, but yet these things that are going on all of a sudden shrink. How can you, you know, ethically justify keeping that amount of staff on? So you got to respond by what you're looking at and saying, okay, we got to decrease some numbers and see what critical services we must provide, and then make a list of things what we would like to provide. So you got to get the must taken care of first, budget wise, and then you got to look at, okay, this is what we really would need to do and want to do. So you got to get those ciphered out, and then you look at it and say, okay, how do we prioritize these? So really what it boils down to is prioritizing what the city is providing, what it could do without, what the citizens can do without, at least temporarily, and then bring those back in as we become stronger. As you see, over the last several years, we've brought a lot of new services back in. We've increased our services and our returns and our products from the city. Right now, budgetarily speaking, we're on, you know, I'm part of this, you know, I'm council president. So with the mayor, we're looking at the city manager and saying, hey, we're going to go with the only thing we're going to spend right now is things that we are mandated to spend. We're going to hold off on any of our capital improvements. We're going to hold off on our capital expenditures. All that stuff, we just got to stop, because we may not need to. We may be fine, but that money's not going anywhere if we don't need it somewhere else. So right now you got to do like a semi spending freeze, and then look and see what's costing money. We've done, we're doing that attrition reduction of jobs through attrition right now, and not backfilling.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. That's a big subject. A lot more talk about that if we could.
We have some further questions on that. Greg, you know, you're a business owner, you own properties, you've been dealing with numbers, you worked for the city of Eugene for some time. So big numbers and big budgets aren't something that's foreign to you. How would those experiences, now you're dealing with your own individual economy as a business owner and property owner, if you're elected to Ward 6 as Ward 6 City Councilman, how would your experiences serve the citizens, the constituents, and the city in what is going to be a tremendous financial shortfall?
When I first got out of college, I worked for the city of Eugene, as you mentioned, and I don't know if you remember Eugene decisions. So again, like Joe said, they took these decisions out to the citizens, not just citizen panels or citizen representatives, but citizens, and said, you know, how do you want to address this? And there's basically three things, and Joe touched on one of them. Well, on all three of them, but increase taxes, reduce the city services. And so people who had cut and dry views of no new taxes or something, after they went and through the whole process, they did increase some taxes to maintain some services. So that's how you'd present it to them, is here's what we have. Here's what we don't think we're going to have in the future, this shortfall. What do you want? You know, what do you want to keep? How bad do you want to keep it? One of the last things that I remember, I mean, I was young, but the leadership was really good. Mike Gleason, Warren Wong, and one of the last things they did, and I'm sure when Joe was on the budget committee or the city council back then, you don't want to cut jobs. So they dealt with some of it at the beginning through attrition, but they did have to release some people towards the end. So, and it's a hard deal to do. It's a hard decision to make, but that's why they're they're there to make those hard decisions.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, Nick, your question, sir?
Hello, everybody again. What does Springfield need to do, in your opinion, to focus to continue partnerships to increase the improved quality of life of Springfield and to stimulate a pro-business climate? And let's start with Greg this time.
Improve quality of life. And what was the second piece?
Continue with the pro-business climate that Springfield's been promoting.
The improved quality of life. I love this, the small town feel. And as we grow, and we are going to grow, we have to thoughtfully plan to keep that small town vibe. Not exactly sure how, but that's what I would like to see. Pro-business, keeping in touch with the businesses. I had the opportunity to meet Vaughn Mickelson from the Eugene area, or the Springfield area, Chamber of Commerce, and just being connected to the businesses that way, having some kind of line, some line of communication to see what the businesses need. I think that a healthy small business environment is needed. If you have a healthy small business, everybody benefits. So that's how I would make it an emphasis. If I were elected city council, is to be the pro small business candidate.
Okay. All right. Do you need to repeat the question, Joe?
Yeah.
Oh, did I answer it for you, or?
Yep, that was great. So Joe, same question. What does Springfield need to continue to do, in your opinion, to focus on to create partnerships to increase continue to improve quality of life of Springfield citizens and to stimulate and continue the pro-business climate?
Okay, thanks. Good question. Big subject again. You're getting some big ones in there. Okay, so I'll hit on the quality of life thing. That's pretty catchy phrase, but really quality of life starts, I think, with quality and safety of the community. So we started a structure of a very, very strong criminal justice system within Springfield, working with offenders and having areas in which we can deal with offenders and not have a revolving door, so they get adjudicated and move on. They're done, which is huge. It's not like somebody making a bad choice and then all of a sudden have this anchor for the next 15 years dragging behind them. So that's important. Also working with people with addictions and having systems in place for them to break out of their addictions and stop preying on the rest of the community. So while that's going on in a very strong criminal justice system, we go through and you look at, you're talking about quality of life too, is that we have a very strong parks and recreation district through Willamette Lane. So Willamette Lane, we partner heavily with, we have what they call a Team Springfield, and Team Springfield is made up of the City of Springfield, Willamette Lane Parks and Rec District, Springfield Utility Board, and the school board. So we all come together every year, twice a year, to figure out what our agencies, each one of these agencies, are needing and find out how we can help each other out. So that's a very strong partnership. Also, looking at businesses, I'm a proponent of small business. I've had mine for 25 years. I've lived here in town for 38 years. I've raised my family here in Thurston, so I'm very connected to the Thurston community and the Eugene or Springfield. But I also understand that we can't thrive on just small businesses. You got to have some big business in here that have the big dollars that come in with the big buildings, and that's part of your tax structure, your foundation. So you have to have a balance. So you have to know when that balance occurs and when to bring them in whenever you can. That's why we have, our economic development director and working with those communities of both small and large business.
Thank you, Joe.
You bet.
Robert?
All right, question number whatever, 2 for me. All right. So this is, I'm going to give you an opportunity to spend some money. And we'll start with Joe with this one. The city receives a grant of $1 million to use however you see fit. What would you do with it? Joe, we'll start with you.
Okay, well, it's interesting that you bring that up. Is that I just looked at, and just on Monday looked at having $1,139,000 to spend on CBDG funds within Springfield and see how best they can help the community. How we split that up is that number one, housing is the biggest issue, bar none, in any town, in any city, in any state. So we diverted 600 and some $1,000 to Cornerstone Community Housing so they can start working on actual housing. We put some money towards Arc of Lane County, who work with very tender, sensitive situations with children and helping them actually make a small park for them, help that. NAMI, N-A-M-I, is a mental health group that works with people with extreme mental illnesses and help stabilize them. They were looking for a place to actually operate out of instead of bouncing around. We sent off money, 300 and some thousand for them. And then even the Relief Nursery. The Relief Nursery says our buses, our transportation is getting broken into almost daily, and all of our gas gets stolen almost daily. We separated money from them, started with $25,000 to get a secure room in which they can park their buses. So those are the $1 million. That's really basic needs, and those are just things you have to get done in the community to keep your community strong. So those are the most vulnerable populations. So I would spend, like I said, I would spend that $1 million on our most vulnerable right now, because our most vulnerable 2 months ago are even more vulnerable now. So that's when I would shove all that and do whatever we can for our populations that are most vulnerable right now.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Joe.
You bet.
Greg, would you like the question again?
Please.
The city receives a grant of $1 million to use however you see fit. What would you do with it?
The first thing I thought of when you asked that question is to try to find the shortcomings of the police and the fire and life safety. But then Joe brought up affordable housing, and I thought, yeah, that would be a place to spend it. And I got a request right before I left from Square One Villages and Cultivate Incorporated requesting funds from the Springfield. They're going to request funds from the Springfield Budget Committee, and for a pilot project. And I got things like that, because one of the big things that I think that folks in our city need is good affordable housing. But right now in the environment, you know how expensive housing is. It's hard for a person, young person, old person, whatever situation you're in, to buy a house. So I would look at things like that. How can we work together with charities and create opportunities for people to buy housing? Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. So next question is for regarding housing. I'll start with you, Greg. Do you have policy ideas? You're a property owner. You own many residential properties, commercial properties. You're an experienced property owner. What type of policies would you like to see implemented, or policies you might like to pursue if you're elected to Ward 6 City Council?
For overall housing?
For overall housing, yes, sir.
Okay, well, I think there's underutilized areas in the city, whether they're vacant lots or whether they're underused lots. I'd like to see the city somehow taking ownership of them somehow, and then turning them over to private developers and get housing units built that way. Then you'd have to have some kind of incentive to make it worthwhile for the builders to develop these things. The builders I've talked to said there wasn't really any money to be made in affordable housing, and I didn't quite understand that. But if the city can make it worth their while to build it, and then do two things: get those lots that a lot of them are overrun with weeds and debris and whatnot and garbage. We can take care of that and build houses, and get the builders working and get other people working. I'd look at that.
Very good. All right, Joe, same question. You've been on the council now. You have a lot of internal working knowledge of different policies that are already in effect. What policies is the council currently pursuing that you would like to continue to pursue? And are there any new policies you'd like to see implemented if reelected for Ward 6 City Council?
Well, you're talking about a 2-year project here or more that we've started. So I've got I feel bad for Greg because I got the inside knowledge of what the city's doing. So I totally feel for you, but I just want to put that out there. But I'm a very strong advocate for housing. I have spearheaded working with what they call the ADUs, or the accessory dwelling units project. Now, those accessory dwelling unit projects do help the builders to an extent by allowing, of course, for the new Senate bill, I think it was 1145, that is allowing now 2 homes on any single home lot within a few restrictions. But it's basically the city can't say, no, you can't build a second home here. So that's going to open up some properties that Greg mentioned as well. The thing that the city has been doing, and I've been really pushing forward, is that, and I don't know if many people are aware that if you go to build a single family home, you got to come up with about $28,000 cash before you can sink a shovel in the ground. So those fees and system development charges are killers for builders. That's why they're saying it doesn't pencil out, is because those fees are huge. So I worked with the city, and the rest of council worked with the city. We waived the SDCs for accessory dwelling units. The problem is, and the reason why that program is not skyrocketing, is because we have Springfield Utility Board. They haven't dropped those fees that they have, and we also have the Lima Lane fees. We have all these other agencies that are part of that $28,000, and people don't understand that it's not the city charging it, it's everybody. So we've got to work with those partners to see if we can't keep pushing those forward, because I'm a strong believer that if you could build a 680 square foot accessory dwelling unit, most younger families should and would probably be able to afford those. And it's a jump start to get a hard roof over their heads and a sink and a bathroom. It's the minimum, but I am a huge proponent of that infill. So anyway, it goes on forever. Different things.
Okay, Nick.
All right. Well, I just kind of came up with this one after all those questions, so I was a little off the cuff. But so I'm a real estate agent. I deal with this housing situation on a daily basis. When I came from Alaska, I came from a state that had high wages. People made really good money, and housing costs weren't that big of an issue because everyone made good money. So it's a direct connection with the wages that our community makes and why the housing cost is an issue. What can the city do to help boost and promote higher paying incomes for the citizens to be able to afford the houses? Because I think, how our city's set up with available land and, how the growth has happened, it's insulated the values, which is good for our homeowners, but at the same token made it difficult for new homeowners to get into it. So how would the city increase wages and provide more higher paying jobs? Let's start with Joe on this one.
Okay, let me give you an exact example of what you're talking about, and it makes complete sense. We created an enterprise zone for U.S. Bakery over in Glenwood that used to be like Williams Bakery, the place where you used to drive by on Glenwood on Franklin and smell those fresh bread. Part of that agreement was that they didn't pay the city taxes on the promise that they hired, and don't quote me on the exact numbers, but it's in the approximation of, I believe, 40 workers or 45 workers, and their minimum wage was at that time that was $48,000 annual wages. And so they wanted to say, hey, we wanted to extend this and say, okay, well, you need to add some more staff and you need to bump up their annual wages. So we work with those. That's a perfect example of working with a larger business with agreements and having those tools to be able to get those folks to hire and pay higher wages. There's no way that the city has any control over jobs, especially with the manual labor jobs. There's nothing we can do to make some business pay somebody more than to do that. But we can, as part of that balance I mentioned earlier about those businesses, is when you go to attract businesses and try to draw them into the city, you handpick businesses to see which ones, to find out which ones you want to bring in that are paying those good jobs or paying those good wages. But you also got to make sure you have a workforce that will match up with that business for those wages. It's more than just higher wages. You got to have a quality workforce to be able to do that. And it goes right back to the education we're offering them, goes right back to trade jobs we're offering them. It's a big package, but you have to gear yourself towards businesses that can afford to pay those higher wages. Otherwise, it's gonna be hard to pull yourself out of that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Greg,
Could you repeat
Greg,
the
you
gist
need,
of that, Nick?
you need to
please?
repeat that?
Yeah, because I have an
Yeah,
answer, but
so-
I want to make sure that it's.
Yeah, so I can recap it. So essentially, like I said, I deal with real estate on a daily basis, and our housing costs is obviously appreciated over the years, but our wages, I don't think, have matched that. And so what can the city do to, kind of like Joe said, create or foster business opportunities to be able to hopefully increase wages, or increase that livable wage that is within Springfield?
So my first response to that was, I don't want the city or government to be involved in how private sector, determines what my wage is. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's should be left up to the private sector. I think that's where, when the government does get involved in it, that's where things start going left, in my view. We, and as private sector owners, we know what our wages should be, and we tried to have a healthy, competitive wage with other people in our industry. So that was kind of I wouldn't want government. I would want the least amount of government interference in determining how I set my wages. I think again, I go back to the healthy small business environment. If it's healthy, you're going to have good wages, but you got to let the private sector determine that.
is that your full answer?
That's my full answer.
Thank you. Robert?
All right, let's shift gears a little bit here. So this is a scenario, and we'll start with Greg. As someone begins sharing a position with you, you immediately recognize it runs contrary to your personal beliefs and vision. How do you proceed?
Which candidate?
Greg.
Me. If someone's sharing a position with me,
that you immediately recognize runs contrary to your own personal beliefs and vision, how do you proceed in that conversation?
I respect everyone's opinion, or perspectives. How I proceed, with respect. Everybody's entitled to what they believe in. Whether, I'm assuming you're talking religious or lifestyles. Is that correct?
So let me clarify, if that's okay, Mark. So the position that they're talking about is something that runs contrary to your political stand. You've also, both of you have expressed strong support for business. So let's modify this slightly. Somebody is expressing an anti-business sentiment, an anti-business position to you. How do you proceed in that conversation with them? How would you manage that conversation?
And I have a lot of friends like this who don't agree with me. I listen to what they have to say, everything they have to say, and respect their viewpoint. If it's a decision that we're going to make on something and we differ with how to get there, I will still listen to what they have to say. So I don't act with prejudice to them or anything like that. Everybody's views is worthy. Everybody's perspectives are worthy. So nobody has all the right answers. So listen to everyone and come to a decision, a sound decision that everybody agrees with, or at least can kind of agree with, but agrees to meet the goal.
Thank you. Joe, do you need me to restate that or you got it?
I think I got it. Thank you,
Okay.
Robert. So as an elected person, there is almost every single council meeting, you're going to have somebody that's contrary to what decision is being made and what it appears to be going one direction. That's what the high bucks are for, is as a volunteer, you get to listen, but you know, and you get some very heartfelt, very emotional folks that are very tied into some things that are quite contrary to where you believe the decision should lie. And you're right, you have to absolutely respect what they're saying, but you also, I've have experienced people when they come in have mentioned things that I did not consider first. So that's something where I look at and say, hey, I need to be open enough to hear what they're saying and not shut them down. Don't have any predisposed decisions or anything like that, but hear everybody out. And then the nice thing about this position as a council is that you are not making the decision. It is a group of people from a diverse background that are making the decision collectively. So everybody hears the same thing. No one hears anything different than anybody else. And then you talk to those folks that you work with, your colleagues, and say, hey, what is the best in this situation? And that's where all the good conversation is. And that's where you really come out with some of those best decisions. So you get all the facts, you discuss those facts, and then you come up with a collective decision. And that's where we go to the voting process. And I can tell you that there's been many votes that have not been unanimous. And that's fine. I can tell you that with the colleagues that I work with on the council, we have differed on many different items, but we're very, very close and we respect each other highly. So it's really about being mature about it, knowing that you're elected for a position to make those tough decisions, but you also know that you were elected based on a certain how people understand you and why they elected you because of where you stand. So you can't differ from that and go away from where you stand because someone else says, hey, I don't want you to do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next question. I'll start with you, Joe, since you just finished. As a board member myself on the Springfield Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, it's really important that the full scope of our business community is involved and heard about the recovery process. How can we come alongside the city, whether it's just the city or Team Springfield, the full scope of economic development. What would you do, Councilman Pictionary, to ensure that the business community, whether they're small business or large business, and their leadership has a chance to be heard, to participate in the renewal process of our local economy?
Okay, so I'm kind of had a hard time tracking exactly what the question is because I think you answered part of it already. So,
what are some of the actions you would ensure took place so that the voices of the large and small businesses and the leadership that serves them in the community are part of the renewal process of the economy?
Okay, gotcha. And first I want to correct earlier. I was thinking of Vonnie, but I said Jackie. I was thinking of Jackie Michelonis, and I forgot it was Vonnie. So I apologize. But sorry, Vonnie, if you're listening to this. No, you know what? The chamber is it's an amazing little agency in its own entity because they're the hub for all the businesses, as opposed to the city is more of a service oriented. So the Chamber of Commerce is more of a communicator, and the city really has to lean heavily on that chamber to give us that feedback that what the businesses are needing and saying. And we depend upon that feedback being from the majority, because they've got their fingers out, the branches out all over the community, and all kinds of different types of businesses, from one person business to 1,000 or 500. So I think that right now, I think the chamber is not actually part of Team Springfield, but I think they should be at least an ingredient of Team Springfield. So that way, all the different local agencies, the tax districts or the taxing agencies, which are our Team Springfield, they need to listen to the chamber with equal equal sets of eyes, equal sets of ears to really hear what's happening. So, and that doesn't mean, again, I lean heavily on our economic development people, is that those folks also listen to business and they go out and talk to the businesses. There's multiple businesses that we've brought into Springfield that are as Courtney, she stays in contact and calls those businesses literally on a scheduled basis to say, hey, how's it going? Is there anything the city can do for you? What is going on? You have problems, etc. You're experiencing problems, and you'd be surprised how many people say, oh yeah, you know, there's something I want to tell you. They don't have time to just all of a sudden when something comes up, drop what they're doing and pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm having problems here. They move on, but what people ask them about it. So communication is really the key.
Very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Greg, do you need me to repeat the question, sir?
Basically, renewal process of local economy, correct? What would be the renewal process of the local economy?
How would you include the chamber to ensure that small businesses, large businesses, and the chamber leadership is involved in that renewal process? What would some of your strategies be to make sure that those voices are heard and their ideas potentially incorporated?
Okay, so I just recently became involved with the Springfield Chamber of Commerce, and I've been impressed with Vonnie. I think working with her, having some kind, there's a lot of information on the Springfield site, but just having something, a platform dedicated specifically for, because sometimes it's information overload when you go there. But if you just have something that says, okay, this is what we're going to do, and go through the Springfield Chamber of Commerce or the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce, I think they're all intertwined, and with maybe something that's connected to the city of Springfield, all right there in one area, without business people having to go to different areas, especially if they're not real versed in technology like I am. Like I'm not versed in it. Go to the chamber site, get in there, find something that's easy to see. What's my son call me, a boomer? So for the boomers, and right there, and that's how you all connect and somehow have a public forum, kind of like this, and people just jot down ideas, jot down requests. And one of the things that comes to mind is the SBA loan. I mean, that's where I went first, is the Springfield, and then they had a nice little tab in there, and then kind of that was information overload, but I still, it narrowed me down to one single place. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, well, we have we're going to go ahead and ask one more question before we get to closing statements. I think it's good. We might ask two more. We started a couple of minutes late. That's okay with both candidates. You guys up for that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Nick.
Yeah, so this is just kind of a personal question. You know, what do you remember as your first volunteer thing that you did as a child or a young adult? At what age was that? And what did you take away from that you're going to put forward in being potential council member for the city of Springfield?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear part of that. Yeah. You kind of cut out there.
A lot of feedback, Nick. Maybe away from the phone or away from your microphone a little bit.
Different. All right, I've got my plugs in. Let me try it again. So what was your first volunteer experience, at what age, and what did you learn from that experience? That work?
Mm-hmm.
My first volunteer experience, at what age?
And what did you take from that?
Well, I must have been like 8 years old. I was a Catholic at that point. And our church collected food for people that fallen on hard times. So our priest took us. There was about 6 of us boys and almost as many girls, and we took some food and clothing because there's some kids that were my age. And what I took from that was that. My first thought was the family, especially the father, was a little too proud to take this. But towards the end of it, after we left, and they tried to pay us back by feeding us, and which we took the food. It was that some people, no matter what the circumstances, do need help, but it's also very important to accept the help graciously. The father kind of made us feel bad because, he was proud. But at the end, I felt I did a good thing. We did a good thing, and we helped people, and they came back and thanked us later on, even the children when they were adults.
Thank you, sir.
Well, mine's, I too was in Catholic church, and I was the altar boy thing, and that was all volunteer work. And I got to tell you, it didn't really instill a whole bunch in me at that point. But I can tell you, at the age of 15 or 14 or 15, I was a volunteer as an Explorer Scout with Eugene Police Department. And I was very heavily involved with them and going on all the calls. Back then, you went on all the calls. Nothing was held back. And then I moved on to the Lane County Sheriff's Search and Rescue volunteer team. And so I was heavily involved in that. And you're doing these search and rescue missions and looking at these people next to you that are going through the most horrendous geography and topography, and snow and ice and rain and hills and rocks, and I mean all these things. And what stuck to me is we'd all be working together, and then all of a sudden you'd come across this person that you were looking for, and then that very second or two that they see you is it hits your heart, man. I'm telling you, and that feeling of being a server and I guess a rescuer for people in dire need, of literally life and death dire need, is indescribable, and it's permanently etched. And so I guess that's maybe 31 years of law enforcement kept me in that field of that hardcore desire of helping others, and as a volunteer for volunteering for the city council since 2004. So it's not for self-gratification. It's for knowing how you're impacting those other people's hearts, and that's what it boils down to. You're actually part of their prayers, and you were answering prayers of theirs. Now, how more impactful can that be? How more important can that be?
Very good. That question was a very nice segue. That was a very nice question, Nick. I really appreciate your heartfelt intention behind that. And I think that's really a good point to go. Robert, I'm going to go into closing statements because that's a nice temperament and a nice spirit to do that. So Greg, we'll start with you. Closing comments. You have 3 minutes. Your statements to the voters and the citizens of Ward 6 concerning your desire to be elected as city councilman.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Thank you, panel. I appreciate your time. And I shared this with Mark. I love the electoral process. I'm happy and fortunate to be able to participate in it. I'm running for city council to serve my community. I listen to my neighbors wanting safer streets, more businesses in our area, safer schools, more crosswalks. I'm pro small business. I hear contractors complaining about paying too much in fees, too many regulations. I want to address those issues. A healthy business community benefits everyone. I also believe that the people of Springfield should have a choice when electing their city officials. If for nothing else, I'm running to give our citizens a choice. Please feel free to contact me. Visit my website, www.gybarraward6.com, or email me at gybarraward6 Please vote. Please stay safe. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, sir. All right, Joe, your final comments, sir, as incumbent to the voters and the constituents of the city of Springfield, please.
Okay, thanks. First, I want to start. I appreciate you, Greg. I think it's awesome that you are stepping in. You seem to be a great guy. Thank you for your service as a Marine. My son is a Staff Sergeant, Marine Corps, active duty right now. Yeah, and it's an infection. And my son-in-law is in the Green Beret. He's active right now. So thank you for your military service, and it's appreciated very much so. I served, I guess, here locally not military, but I think I served the public just as well. I just want to, I believe I've been doing a good job. I continue to have, I'm a high energy person. I'm not sitting around letting things go next to me. I get involved. I want to continue to do that. I'm a commissioner on the Metropolitan Wastewater Management. The sewage, which sounds very bad or boring, but we're doing a bang up job. That's a perfect example of how to work together. That's Lane County, City of Springfield, and the City of Eugene in one agency, and handles all the sewage in this whole region. And we do an amazing job. It's just fantastic. Being part of Team Springfield as a collaborative effort with all these different taxing districts and agencies working together. You name one other community that does that, you have a hard time finding one. It's really a fantastic thing. And then my involvement with the city has always been driven by what's best for the greater good. It's not driven by one or two individuals. It's not driven from my own personal desires. I've got rental properties. I've got a small business, worked in the community and public safety. I'm well-rounded for looking at different perspectives. And I appreciate others and I respect others. And I'm respect to you, Greg, for stepping up. I have no problem with it. And, you know, I guess for lack of better terms, I'd be happy to help mentor you, however this turns out, maybe the other way around, but I think it's great. And so I enjoy meeting you at this forum, and thank you, Mark, for putting this together, and everybody on the panel. And Robert, appreciate your questions, and Nick, very good. So thank you. I appreciate your support. Oh, Pictionary.com.
You know, it's been a real honor to have the both of you participating this evening, and thank you for your willingness to commit to this so that the voters that don't know you and want to have a chance to hear you both speak and your opinions and perspectives will now have a chance to do that. Robert and Nick, thank you as well for your participation and your sacrifice of time. Very thoughtful questions, very meaningful. Obviously, we wish both candidates the absolute best. Election day is almost here, so best wishes on this new media campaign process that all candidates are having to navigate. But I'm sure that both of you will carry yourselves very well, and you're both great representatives of what, but you know, this forum showed a lot of both of you, what your belief systems are. So great representatives of what we need leading and guiding this city. And so we appreciate both of you. With that said, gentlemen, have a good night. This video will be available for you to acquire off of the Molina Leadership and Business Development Solutions, hopefully later on this evening, if not by tomorrow.
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you,
gentlemen.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Mark.
Nice meeting you, Joe.
Likewise, Greg.
Have a good night, all.
All right, see ya.
Bye.
Thank you.